Have you ever wondered how your sales performance compares against your competitors and peers? The B2B Sales Benchmark Report provides the definitive guide to what success looks like in 2021. See how you compare in terms of win rate, sales cycle, average deal value, relationships, and engagement. You can see the results and get the full report at ebster.com/B2B-sales-benchmarks.
Now tuned into the greatest.
This is Sales Ops Demystified.
X about me.
You have to be closing all the time. Always be closing.
I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to be the best at it.
The inches we need are everywhere around us.
Learn from thought leaders in sales operations. Actionable strategies from Sales Ops Ninjas. And now, your hosts, Tom Hunt and Henry Peacock. Sales Ops Demystified.
Of the Sales Ops Demystified podcast, we're joined by Rowan Bailey, who's currently head of revenue operations at Peakon.
Hello.
Hello, Rowan. And was previously in both sales and sales operations at Perkbox. So we have a salesperson in our midst, or not? Maybe I read that one on your LinkedIn.
It was an account manager role, so it was post sale, but definitely lived and breathed next to the salespeople at that company. So yeah.
Did you have a quota?
Ish. We had the portfolio value that we had to bring back. So it was a bit more freeform than that, but yeah.
Got it. Okay, so not like out and out sales, but kind of almost there.
Yeah, exactly. It was a retention and land expand sort of model.
Got it. Okay, cool. So here's an interesting transition, right? Because within Perkbox, you went from account manager into sales operations. So
that's right.
Cool. So could you just talk a bit more about kind of why and how you made that jump?
Yeah, sure. So Perkbox employee benefits platform, joined it in 2015, and it was around 30 people at the time, a bit of a rocket ship at that time. It was like really kicking off. By the time I left 2 years later, it was 180 people, just to give you an idea of the growth. And then my transition into ops kind of happened quite organically. Like I started mainly out of necessity, trying to migrate my processes off of spreadsheets, which the whole company seems to run on at the time. And then as a result of that, I mean, the rest of the company just started looking over and being like, hey, how come you've done all that stuff so quickly? Like, what are you using to do that? And I'm like, well, the tools that are already at your disposal. Do you mind coming over and showing me how to do that? So what started off as smoothing out processes and kind of data input for the account managers quickly became redesign the whole sales process and integrate Salesforce with finance and that sort of thing to kind of smooth along collections by direct debit and invoicing. So it was organic, makes it sound quite pedestrian. It was still kind of progressing at a rate of knots, and the workload was huge, especially as my own team at that time was growing. By the time I moved away from that position to focus solely on ops, I was looking after a team of 9, I think, at that point. So looking after their own portfolios of, say, like $1 million ARR each, and then dealing with the ops stuff as well, as you can imagine, was a lot to take on. So I was quite happy when my boss at the time, the COO, said, do you want to just focus on this 100% of the time? Yes, I do. Thank you very much.
So when you joined, you weren't managing account managers, you were actually an account manager. So.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you progressed to managing account managers, and that's when you started doing the ops work, and then you switched out. Is that right?
Yeah, it was quite good for in terms of how I then started to approach problems. What started as how can I make this easier from a purely selfish perspective was, right, what's scalable, what's repeatable, what works for the rest of the team. And then, it was quite an easy sell after that to be like, do you know how we do it now? It takes half an hour to fill out, a few columns on the spreadsheet, a couple of clicks and you're done. So yeah, that was kind of how that progressed.
Got it. And do you think that there's something like Why do you think you gravitated, or what is it within you? And this is kind of a deep question early on in the interview. What was it within you that gravitated more to the operational side rather than just managing more account managers?
It is a good question. I think my just inherent repulsion for being bored, and that is something that comes up when I have to do a job more than once, the same thing more than once. I'm just like, okay, I know how this works now, done. So maybe it is a kind of a drive to find out how things work at their nitty gritty, and then try and build stuff that automates that for you. Cool.
And then moving on to Peakon today. So talk to me about revenue operations.
Okay. In what sense?
So we've had, ever since the start of this podcast, which is, as everyone knows, called Sales Ops Demystified, we've had people saying that actually Sales Ops is just one piece in a trimester. Operations department. Trifecta, yeah. And so I like to kind of run that past you, because it seems like you're running a more integrated operations team.
Yeah, that's the plan. It was revenue operations in title only to begin with. As Peakon was growing, the focus naturally is on sales and that machine, getting that ticking over. But the vision was there from the start, which is nice to incorporate, the top of funnel marketing work, and also then post sale retention, which is the cornerstone of any ARR SaaS business. So that was there from the beginning, and right now currently building out the team. So we've got someone focused just on the sales ops side, and we're hiring currently for CS ops role to look at that post sale. Actually, I feel a bit bad. Like CS have been a bit not neglected, but they've taken the back seat as we've been scaling the business over the last few years. And now, not that we have a problem there or anything, it's more preventative, and it feels quite nice to take a proactive step for once. But yeah, you're right. Having that integrated team that sit across the tech stack specifically, and making sure that data's flowing from department to department as it should, without getting too siloed or too caught up in the flavor of the month stuff that comes from managers within those tiers. That's quite nice, and it's quite a nice position to be in as a ops professional, to say, no, actually, I can see your need for that, but please understand that this has to take priority now. And having that impartiality is quite nice, and I think is quite well respected actually at Peakon as well.
Got it. So can you quickly give us a taste for the numbers of people within that operations team? And then I guess we don't need, and rough numbers for the marketing, sales, and customer success team, just so we can understand the
build up.
Yeah,
sure. So until last Monday, there were two of us in the operations team. And that's myself and Bart. I hired Bart last September, and he's come in as a revenue systems engineer, I believe his title is now. He codes in Apex and builds stuff out in Salesforce that's kind of custom for us, avoiding, actually twice now, he's helped us avoid quite a hefty bill from Salesforce for additional functionality that they provide in a different product, but actually we just needed a simplified version of said product, and he's been building that stuff out. So he joined in September. Ada joined last Monday, and like I said, we're hiring another one, hopefully for a start date of around October this year. And that is servicing, the company's just crossed the 200 mark, I think, and I joined when it was about 38-ish.
Wow.
So quite a lean team, I would say. So that's, it's had its challenges, but it's also been quite good because we've known everything so intimately, and it's forced us to build for scale. It's like our number one principle. Like if it's a flavor of the month kind of problem or topic that comes up, like we really ask 3 questions, the 3 whys or whatever, to drill down and say, is this actually necessary? Will it still be relevant in 6 months, 1 year's time? So the sales team right now, I think we're about 60-ish salespeople, CS, maybe 20. And then there's a lot of product people here in Copenhagen where I'm currently sat.
Cool. And the marketing team, just roughly?
Let's say 25, 30. I should know that But
No, that's fine.
actually, no, wait, that's a complete lie. It's far smaller than that. I know because I was in a room with them drinking cocktails last Friday, so I should know that. Maybe like 15,
Cool.
15, 20. Yeah.
So that is a lean operations team. I try to get the ratio from every guest, and I think the average is between one ops person per 15 to 20 reps. So
that's interesting.
It seems like you are significantly higher. Well,
I'll use that as a pitch to get more headcount budget. But actually, it's an interesting point. I don't think that the ops team should scale linearly with the company at all. If you're building an efficient ops team that's concentrating on the right problems, focusing in on those, the real levers that are going to drive that growth, then actually your headcount should be spaced out by, I don't know what the mathematical term would be, but as a function of headcount in the business, say you make your first hire after 30 people and your next one after 60 people, you should make your next one after 150 people, for example. That makes sense to me, and it shows that the team is efficient and working on the right problems. There's another school of thought which would say that there's only so many hours in a day and so many problems that you could be working on in order to accelerate growth. So maybe adding headcount to the pile is an answer to that. I'm kind of on the fence on that argument.
Nice. Can we quickly review the current sales tech stack at Peakon?
Yeah, sure. So I was quite lucky in the sense that the C-level or the co-founder's attitude towards buying tech is, first of all, very positive. They see the value in adding tech to the stack. I came in, for example, with Salesforce already in place, built out using standard objects, as 5 stages on the opportunity. It was a dream compared to some of the horror stories you hear ops people having to inherit in companies that they join. Our co-founder, for example, got Salesforce in when there was only 2 salespeople, I think, which at that stage is quite uncommon, I think. But his reasoning for doing so was saying, right, as we scale, Salesforce is going to be at the core of our sales operation. If we want that to be the best-in-class product, and we can't afford to spend extra money, like at 60, 70, 100 extra dollars a month, then we've got bigger problems than the CRM that we're using, which I quite liked because it meant that my job was a lot easier. So we've got Salesforce at the core. We use Marketo for our marketing automation, SalesLoft for outreach for the SDR team. We've got a tool called Chili Piper, which I'm a fan of, and anyone from Peakon knows that I'm kind of evangelist for that product. Meeting booking and also lead assignment through round robin queues. It's quite a nifty thing. We use New Voice Media for making calls. What else have we got? We've got basically a tool for every occasion. I'm actually trying to consolidate a little bit and cut some of the chaff out. My problem with some of those tools is the fact that there are overlapping functionality. And as soon as you have that in a sales team, it's very easy for a salesperson to start coming up with their own processes. I'm going to run my cadences from this lead enrichment tool rather than SalesLoft, for example, where the team cadences lie. And then you end up with this situation where you've got different people doing different things. You try and make a change. Some people love it. Other people are like, what the hell is that? So it's the recipe for chaos unless you kind of stamp it out quite early.
So you're saying that if a product had, say, 3 functionalities and you already had products covering the other 2, would that go against it in the buying cycle for that product?
It's a good question. I think the lack of flexibility around which elements of the product we can and can't use, definitely. And I've made or not made buying decisions based on that before, because I could anticipate the level of chaos it would have brought into the sales team.
Got it. And on that topic, I want to talk more about how you interact with sales reps, whether that was back at Perkbox or here at Peakon. How were you able to get a salesperson to do something that maybe they didn't want to do because it wasn't directly associated with their goals, but you wanted them to do it?
To do with work, right?
to do with
is involving sales reps at every stage of that thought process and buying cycle. Actually, I'm going to rewind. Not every stage. You can do the shortlist, and I think ops people should be in charge of the shortlist. But once you've got, say, your 2-3 tools that you're trying to consider to implement, for example, involving them in that decision-making process and running past, say, like a trial phase, letting them impact the user experience specifically, massively helps when it comes to adoption, because once I'm presenting it to the whole team, it's like, well, actually, you've already got validation from your peers. They've been involved in shaping this process. If you don't like it, then you have a problem with them as well as me. You know, it's less ops versus sales, and you've got that collaboration kind of there from the off. I'm talking completely idealistically here. Like I've not done that fairly recently, and it's come back to bite me. So it's a lesson recently learned. And actually, when I look back, the times when I have done that versus the times I haven't, adoption and that kind of lack of friction has always been there. Got
it. I really like that. Just that term, it's less ops versus sales, but actually it can be more sales versus sales if you get the right people on your team.
Yeah, and actually picking your champions for that team is quite important. It's less about picking the people that you would assume to be champions and more making champions of the people that would probably give you the biggest fuss if you just rolled it out without telling them.
The detractors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you can turn a detractor into at least a neutral, then you're good to go.
Yeah. And then you have obviously, in both of your roles, seen sales teams scale. Any tips for onboarding, for efficient and effective onboarding?
Now tuned into the greatest.
This is Sales Ops Demystified.
And in a quick break from our regular programming, I'd just like to tell you a little bit more about what Evster actually does. We've had a lot of people saying, well, Evster's running this podcast, but we don't actually know what Evster do. Like, what do you guys do? And so the best way I like to describe what Evster does is to say that Evster will connect to every inbox from every employee that your business has ever had, and will then map and score all of the relationships that your business has ever had. So if you had a salesperson that 3 years ago had a relationship with someone, they didn't close that account, so they didn't update or they didn't create that account or add that record in Salesforce, that salesperson leaves the business, you lose that relationship, the business loses that relationship. But if you had Evster running, you would be able to surface all that information, you'd be able to see an engagement score with that person in Salesforce. So a new salesperson, let's say starting tomorrow, can then pick up that relationship and then could start engaging and potentially close that deal. So if that sounds interesting to you, that's just one of the things that Evster's team product does. So you can go to www.evster.com/SOD. That's www.evster.com/SOD and jump on a quick demo with one of our team.
So honestly, our onboarding process needs work. I think it is a symptom of the fast growth. Like as soon as you start to try and standardize your onboarding process with processes and tools that are in a constant state of flux, and you might make a lovely presentation and a great onboarding video, but if it's irrelevant 2 weeks later, it's like, ouch. Okay, I don't want to have to keep making this video every 2 weeks. We're currently in a position now where we've stabled out a little bit, and in terms of our processes, and there are some parts of that onboarding journey that I'm looking to kind of just have as a non-recurring meeting in my calendar and have it as a video or something like that they can join instead. We've just invested in a tool called Showpad, which is quite good at building out these kind of custom courses and that sort of thing. So you can add, say, a training video, then a PDF to read, and then a quiz, basically a comprehension quiz at the end to see if they've understood everything. So yeah, I'm going to be leaning on that quite heavily to put my onboarding experience into specific paths and specific courses.
Got it. And then making teams or sales reps specifically more productive. Do you have any wisdom to share?
It's tricky. I think for us, we're reviewing the spiff, the concept of the spiff, especially at the SDR level, where some of the some of the work that they're doing is quite repetitive and not in and of itself inspiring to them. So you have to kind of add that level of inspiration for them. So we're building out this thing called hustle points at the moment, and any outbound activity, outbound meetings, conversations, that kind of thing are all scored differently, and provide a leaderboard, weekly incentives, that sort of thing. Hopefully that shouldn't be that revolutionary to anyone. Using Showpad as a means for getting knowledge out of reps' heads, and basically I think that the result of that is you end up with reps unconsciously benchmarking themselves against their peers in a way that they don't do unless they overhear a conversation across the room, for example. So actually tapping into the competitive instinct of salespeople in order to drive their own learning and their own productivity is quite a nice way of doing it. And that's what the Spiff does. And it's also what, having this situation where we've got everyone's best pitch in one place, for example.
Got it. So you're actually having salespeople upload content into Showpad as training materials for other salespeople.
Exactly. And the nice thing about that is twofold, right? So you've got the pitches there for reps to compare themselves against and actually borrow the best bits from each and actually update their own pitch. And I think we've only run it through once, but the second iteration is going to be really interesting to see the kind of osmosis of ideas between pitches. And then the second thing is we've got a massive repository of everyone's best pitch for onboarding, right? As it feeds back into that really nicely when you've got a new starter, and it's like, well, actually go and listen to everyone in the business, including the CRO's pitch. You will learn very quickly how to talk about Peakon in a very short period of time.
Cool.
We also, there's one more thing actually, I just looked at my notes. Win analysis and loss analysis. Like there's something that we had in Salesforce from pretty much the start. Like, can you write a small paragraph about exactly why we won this deal? What would you have done differently? What would you do next time? That kind of thing. And the game changer for us was actually putting that into Slack. So every time they win a deal or lost an opportunity, you end up with that analysis attached to it. And we saw the quality of those go up. I can't even put a number against it, like 100-fold, rather than lead gone cold or opportunity gone cold will pick up next year. It's like, oh, actually, what did you try? What resounded well with them? What didn't? That sort of thing. So that's a good way of also sharing the learnings, not just in the celebratory moments, but when things aren't going so well as well.
That's nice. But we currently show won and lost in Slack, but we don't include any of the custom fields. So that's actually something that we're going to take away. Very nice. Can we quickly go over forecasting? So how involved are you in the sales forecast?
So forecasting is something that has been under the microscope at Peakon for the last few months. A few months ago, we moved everyone over to using the standard functionality in Salesforce, the forecasting app, having quotas in there, having everyone kind of update their best case pipeline and commit deals for the month. There's a layer that's missing, and that's the kind of the judgment call. Sure, you've got 4 deals in best case, but what's your actual pledge number? What are you actually going to bring in? Rather than being opportunity driven, being that top down rep gut feel side of it. Yeah. So on the plus side, SDs, the CRO, everyone now looks at that forecasting app. We take a screenshot of it every Monday for our revenue meeting. So the whole sales team is singing from the same hymn sheet, which is nice. And we've now got a deal review process in place with reps so that every Wednesday they have an hour blocked out to go through their ops, make sure they're in the right stage, the right amount, and they're making the right call against that. And close date, obviously, that's important. So everything's improving, but we're still looking at third-party tools to bring that extra element and that extra layer over the top of our forecasting. So I think Clary was one we're reviewing. There's a few out there that we're having a look at the moment.
So are you, as the ops team, responsible for making sure that data is useful and accurate? That's your role in the process.
it's my role to make it incredibly transparent when those things aren't up to date. So things like, how long has this opportunity been in that stage? What's the health of this opportunity? We have like this kind of smiley face system. It's very, very advanced. That basically shows if it's been in the current stage for longer than the average close one deal, and whether or not the next steps are in the future and up to date. Then it's very much process driven from the sales directors and other sales managers to say, right, what's the quality of those next steps? Why is that next step in 2 weeks and not tomorrow? There's the coaching piece that comes around it. And that all kind of feeds into the forecasting.
Got it. We have a question here from Zach. How do you keep KPIs aligned with unforeseen data capture? Now, I'm not really sure what Zach means by that. Zach, if you could clarify, Rowan, I'm not sure if that makes sense to you.
Unforeseen data capture sounds scary.
Okay, Zach, can you clarify? We're going to quickly move on. You're probably going to have about 5 minutes to clarify that question. Cool. Next, let's talk about KPIs. What do you think is, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, the most, throughout your career in operations, the most useful or insightful sales-related KPI? It's quite high level, but I have to go with win rate. It's all very well and good celebrating a rep smashing their quota and high-fiving through the office, but if they have crashed and burned a mountain of opportunities to get to where they are and raise themselves up that way, then actually that's not good for business, not good for the rest of the team if they cotton on that's the way that person made that much money by cherry picking ops to that degree. So for me, like, win rate is super important. And just to clarify, I mean, I know I've heard win rate calculated in different ways at different companies. So for me, it's the value of closed won opportunities versus all closed lost opportunities in a given period. And for us, we don't take the reps closed lost value. We have a model that assigns a fair value to an opportunity based off of previously closed won opportunities of similar characteristics. So certain size, certain location, that sort of thing. And that's a model that looks at the last 180 days and kind of keeps refreshing itself as we go along. So therefore, we've got a stable baseline for comparison for the win rate, and that's why I trust it so much. There's another angle on that, though, which is the interplay between the acceptance rate of an opportunity and a win rate. So if the SDRs are booking 100 meetings, but only 20 of them are getting accepted into actual live pipeline, then you expect your win rate to be 100%. So the balance between those two is something that I'm particularly interested in, and I haven't cracked it yet, but I keep a close eye on it and try and model out what a change in one will do to the other and what's good and what's bad. Got it. So you're saying that a salesperson could gain their win rate by having low acceptance?
Yes, absolutely. If I only accept one opportunity and they've already told me on the phone that they love it so much and they want to buy it, then you're going to have a win rate of 100%. So yeah, it's a balancing act between those two, and you shouldn't look at one without the other, really.
Got it. Zach's back.
Zach's back.
Can you see that? So how do you leverage your data, and do you have a way of knowing what you need to drive the business forward? Again, that sounds quite vague, but Rowan, over to you.
Okay, so I think, I guess how I'll answer that is you've got to decide what your non-negotiables are, and that's a phrase borrowed from our CRO. It's about what do I need to know as an ops guy in order to make decent decisions and to identify where the problems are in the funnel. So for me, and we've just talked about one of them, right? Like the acceptance rate from SQL for us to SAO. That's huge. And I need that in place in order to make the decisions I make. anything else, the data capture that comes around that, first of all, we have to ask, is it going to be relevant in a month's time, in 6 months' time, in a year's time? If yes, then are you actually going to do anything with this data? It might be great, and you might see the value of like theoretically capturing this data. But if you're not planning on doing any analysis that involves that data point, then don't bother. Like, it's just extra admin for the reps, and they hate that. So try and keep your processes as clean as possible. I feel like I veered away from his question slightly, but
I mean, yeah, it would be quite hard not to veer away from it. I'm sorry, Zach. It was a great question. Finally, who has taught you the most about sales operations?
It's an interesting one, because I'm actually quite new to the sales ops group in London, and already I've learned a lot, and just by listening to your podcast and a couple of other operations podcasts as well. So there's that side that I'm kind of nurturing now. I'm still kind of finding my feet in that world. But thank you very much for having me on. It's been great fun so far. I think really the people that empowered me to kind of follow the ops route I've been very fortunate to have two good managers. The COO at Perkbox, Gautam Sagal, he was fantastic in basically pointing me at an interesting problem and then stepping back and being like, what do you think? Like, how would you solve this? Or how could Salesforce solve this? Or, is there a tool out there that can help us get around this problem? And that kind of laid the groundwork for me thinking like that about every problem. And that's kind of led to where I am today. So yeah, definitely he's a big role model. And then Dan, one of our co-founders here as our CMO, he's very similar in that highly analytical, but he's got a very high bullshit filter as well, which is great for me. So I'll go to him and be like, I've got these numbers, this is kind of what they look like. He'd be like, okay, what about if this was the case? And be like, okay, I'll go back to the drawing board and reanalyze. So yeah, both of those characters have been instrumental in where I am today.
Got it. Now let me share some of the things I like from today. I've never heard this before about how revenue operations can help you avoid flavor of the month projects within the siloed revenue generating operations. Building for scale, like that being a criteria for anything that you're looking to implement. I'd be interested if you develop the algorithm or the formula for the amount that an ops team should scale with a sales team.
Yeah, me too.
I agree. I'm not sure if it should be linear, and what I've been doing on this podcast has been asking and then assuming linear growth. Less ops versus sales when you're trying to influence or get people to buy into a process, and actually you can do sales versus sales if you get the right people on your side. And then having salespeople uploading their own content into any repository so they can benchmark each other and get competitive, I think is awesome as well. So Rowan, that was really, really good. Thank you so much for your time. And
thanks, Tom. Yeah, it's been great. They were really comprehensive notes. I didn't even see you writing. That's impressive.
Thanks, man.
And take care.